The blade caught the morning light as she tested its weight. 3 inches of steel, worn leather handle. Nothing fancy. She'd pulled it from a dead man's belt 2 days ago, along with his boots that were a size too big. The boots she could stuff. With grass, the knife was perfect as it was. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. She didn't know. Where she was going didn't matter. The important thing was to keep moving, stay ahead of whatever was behind her. She'd been running so long she'd forgotten what started it all. Maybe there'd never been a beginning. Maybe she'd been born running. The wanted poster fluttered against the saloon wall, and she recognized the face immediately. Not because she'd seen it before, but because she knew that look, the hollow cheeks of a man who'd been hunted too long, eyes that had seen too much. The reward was substantial. $5,000, dead or alive, Jesse Blackwood. The most wanted man in 3 territories. She was still staring at the poster when the shooting started. The first bullet shattered the window above her head. Glass rained down like deadly snow, and instinct took over. She dropped low, knife already in hand, scanning the dusty main street of Coyote Gulch. 3 men on horseback fired into the bank across the street. Their faces were covered, but their intentions were clear. The 4th man, that's when she saw him. He moved differently than the others, with a fluid grace that spoke of years in the saddle. His horse, a black stallion with a white blaze, danced sideways as bullets flew. The bank door exploded outward. A figure emerged through the smoke, gun in each hand, firing with deadly precision. One of the masked riders tumbled from his saddle. Another cursed and wheeled his horse around. She pressed herself against the wall, making herself small. This wasn't her fight. She'd learned long ago that getting involved in other people's troubles only multiplied your own. But then the lone gunman's eyes found hers across the chaos, and something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, though they'd never met. "Get down!" he shouted. She was already moving, diving behind a water trough as bullets peppered the spot where she'd been standing. Splinters flew from the wooden planks. The man from the bank vaulted onto the black stallion in one smooth motion. Still firing. Another rider fell. The remaining 2 attackers decided they'd had enough. They spurred their horses toward the edge of town, dust clouds marking their retreat. The gunman could have pursued them. Instead, he guided his horse toward her hiding spot. "You hurt?" His voice was low, gravelly. She stood slowly, knife still in hand. "No." He studied her for a long moment. His face was weathered, stubbled, with deep lines around pale blue eyes, the kind of face that had stories written in every scar. She knew without asking, this was Jesse Blackwood. "You were watching my poster." He said it wasn't a question. Hard to miss. 5,000, a lot of money. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Planning to collect?" She glanced at her knife, then at his guns. "Not with this." Smart woman. He holstered one pistol, kept the other loose at his side. "Those men will be back, with friends. You picked a bad day to visit Coyote Gulch. Every day's a bad day somewhere." His eyes narrowed, taking in her oversized boots, the road dust on her clothes, the way she held the knife like she knew how to use it. "You running from something? Aren't we all?" The sound of approaching horses killed any response. Not from the direction the attackers had fled, from the opposite end of town. The local sheriff, most likely, finally responding to the gunfire. Blackwood's jaw tightened. "I'm leaving. Now. You can stay here, take your chances with whoever's coming, or you can ride with me." She looked down the street, then back at him. "Why?" "Because you didn't scream. Didn't run. Most people see shooting, they panic. You went for cover and came up ready to fight." He extended a hand. "And because I recognize the look in your eyes. Seen it in the mirror too many times." The hoofbeats were getting closer. She had seconds to decide. Stay in Coyote Gulch, where she was. Nobody owned nothing, had nowhere to go, or ride with the most wanted man in the West. She shrugged out of her oversized coat, revealing clothes that had seen better days. No bags, no belongings except the knife. Nothing tying her to this place or any other. She took his hand. He pulled her up behind him in one swift motion. The stallion barely seemed to notice the extra weight. "Hold on!" She wrapped her arms around his waist as he spurred the horse forward. They thundered down the main street, past the bank where smoke still drifted from broken windows, past curious faces peering from doorways. The sheriff's posse rounded the corner just as they reached the town limits. "That's Blackwood!" someone shouted. "It's Jesse Blackwood!" Gunfire erupted behind them. Blackwood leaned forward, urging more speed from his mount. She pressed against his back, feeling the bunch and release of muscles as he guided the horse with subtle shifts of weight. The stallion's hooves hammered the hard-packed earth, each stride taking them farther from Coyote Gulch. They rode hard for 10 minutes before Blackwood slowed, guiding them off the main trail onto a barely visible path through scrub brush. The shooting had stopped. The posse had given up pursuit, at least temporarily. "They'll telegraph ahead," she said into his ear. "Every town in 50 miles will know you're coming. Let them." He navigated the horse down a steep embankment, then into a shallow creek. They splashed upstream for a quarter-mile before climbing the opposite bank. "We're not going to any towns." "Where are we going? Does it matter?" "Though you didn't have a map." She fell silent. He was right. She'd been drifting for months, maybe years. Time had lost meaning when you had no destination. They climbed into rougher country, red rock formations rising like ancient sentinels. The sun beat down mercilessly, and she was grateful for the hat Blackwood passed back to her, a battered thing with a bullet hole through the crown. "There's a place," he said eventually. "Canyon about 20 miles north. Good water shelter. We can rest the horse, figure out our next move." "Our?" He glanced back at her. "Unless you'd prefer I drop you at the next settlement. Take your chances with whoever finds you first, the law or those men from town." They weren't lawmen. No, Benedict's boys. Railroad baron, who thinks he owns half of Colorado. I relieved him of some property he'd stolen from settlers. He's been sending hired guns after me ever since. The bank robbery. Withdrawal. That money was headed for Benedict's private vault. Now it's going to the families he cheated out of their land. She processed this information. Modern-day Robin Hood? Nothing so noble. I just hate bullies. They rode in silence for a while, the landscape growing more desolate. She'd never been this far into the badlands. Few people had, which was probably why Blackwood chose this route. "You haven't asked my name," she said. "Figure you'll tell me when you're ready. Or not. Makes no difference to me. I don't have one." She felt him tense slightly. "Everyone has. A name. Not everyone, not anymore." She touched the knife at her belt, a reflexive gesture. "I left it behind, with everything else." He didn't press. She appreciated that. Most people couldn't stand a mystery, had to dig and pry until they unearthed every secret. Blackwood seemed content to let sleeping dogs lie. The trail grew treacherous, winding between towering rock formations that blocked out the sun. The temperature dropped dramatically in the shadows. She shivered, wishing she hadn't abandoned her. And coat in Coyote Gulch. Blackwood felt the tremor. Without a word, he shrugged out of his duster and passed it back. The leather was warm from his body heat, smelled of gunpowder and sage. "Won't you be cold?" "I've been colder." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. They emerged from the canyon into a hidden valley. A spring bubbled from the rocks, feeding a small pool surrounded by cottonwoods. The remains of a stone shelter huddled against one cliff face, not much more than 3 walls and half a roof, but better than nothing. Blackwood dismounted, then helped her down. Her legs were stiff from riding, and she stumbled. He caught her, arm steadied her. Easy. Ground takes some getting used to after hours in the saddle. She nodded, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. He stepped back, giving her space, and began unsaddling the stallion. "Built this place years ago," he said, running a careful hand over the horse's legs, checking for injury. "Back when I was mining these hills. Never found gold, but I found something better. Privacy." She explored the shelter while he tended to the horse. The walls were solid, built to last. A ring of blackened stones marked an old fire pit. Wooden shelves, warped by weather, held a few supplies. Canned goods, matches wrapped in oilcloth, a dented coffee pot. Not much, but it'll do for tonight. Blackwood joined her, carrying saddlebags and a rifle. "There's jerky and hardtack. Coffee if you want it." Her stomach growled at the mention of food. She couldn't remember her last proper meal. Pride made her hesitate. "Go on," he said, setting the bags down. "Going to be a long night on an empty stomach." She dug out the jerky. Tough as leather, but satisfying. They ate in companionable silence, watching the sun sink behind the canyon walls. The sky blazed orange and purple, then faded to deep blue. Stars emerged, more than she'd ever seen. Blackwood built a small fire, just enough for warmth without, creating a beacon. She sat close, grateful for the heat. The night sounds of the desert surrounded them, the distant yip of coyotes, the whisper of wind through stone. "Those men in town," she said, "they'll keep coming." "Benedict's got deep pockets and a long memory. He won't stop until one of us is dead. Why not leave? Head to California or up into Canada." He poked the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling upward. "Running's not living. Besides, someone needs to stand up to men like Benedict. Too many folks can't fight back." "The families you mentioned, the ones he cheated." "Homesteaders mostly. Bought their land fair and square until Benedict decided he needed it for his railroad. When they wouldn't sell, he found other ways, burned crops, poisoned wells, hired thugs to terrorize them. Local laws in his pocket. So you became an outlaw to fight an outlaw." Something like that. He looked at her across the flames. "What about you? What are you fighting?" She was quiet for so long, he thought she wouldn't answer. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Ghosts, shadows, things that might not even be real anymore. She touched the knife again. "Sometimes I think I've been running so long, I've forgotten what started it all. Maybe nothing did. Maybe this is just who I am. Nobody's born running. No, but some of us learn early." She met his eyes. "I was 12 when I killed my first man." He didn't flinch, didn't look shocked. Just wait. He wasn't a good man. None of them were. "The town where I grew up, if you could call it that, had more saloons than homes, more graves than gardens. Mother." She paused, swallowed. "She did what she had to do to keep us fed, until one of her customers decided he'd paid for more than she was willing to give. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl called. He came to our room. She told him to leave. He didn't. I was hiding under the bed like always, heard everything, the fighting, the screaming. Then the silence was worse than screaming." Her hand closed around the knife handle. "I crawled out, saw him standing over her, picked up a kitchen knife from the table. He never saw me coming. Self-defense, protection of another. No court would convict." There was no court, no sheriff, just his brothers, 3 of them. They came looking for him, found him dead, my mother dead, me covered in blood. I ran, been running ever since." Blackwood added another branch to the fire. "How long ago?" 10 years, maybe 12. I stopped counting." She pulled the duster closer around her shoulders. "Stopped using my name. Stopped staying anywhere long enough to matter. Kept moving, kept surviving, that's all. That's enough. Sometimes surviving is all we can do." The fire burned lower. The desert grew cold, that bone-deep chill that comes to the high country after dark. Blackwood spread his bedroll near the back wall of the shelter, gesturing for her to take it. "I'll keep watch. Get some sleep." She started to protest, then realized how exhausted she was. The adrenaline from town had worn off, leaving her drained. She curled up on the bedroll, still, wearing his duster. Blackwood? Yeah? Why'd you really ask me to come with you? You don't know me. Don't owe me anything. He was silent for a moment, silhouetted against the dying fire. Maybe I'm tired of riding alone. Maybe I recognize something in you, that look that says you've got nothing left to lose. Or maybe... He turned to face her. Maybe I just thought you deserved a choice. Stay and face whatever's coming alone, or take a chance on something different. Different doesn't mean better. No, but it doesn't mean worse either. He settled, against the wall, rifle across his knees. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out where we're headed. She closed her eyes, not expecting to sleep. The ground was hard, the night full of strange sounds, but exhaustion won, pulling her down into darkness. She dreamed of her mother's face, of blood on her hands, of endless roads leading nowhere. But for the first time in years, the dreams didn't wake her screaming. Maybe it was the solid walls around her. Maybe it was knowing someone else was keeping watch. Maybe it was simply being still, if only for one night. She woke to grey dawn light and the smell of coffee. Blackwood crouched by the rebuilt fire, the battered pot sending up steam. He looked like he hadn't slept, but his eyes were alert. "Morning," he said, pouring coffee into a tin cup. "Thought we might have company, but it was just a mountain lion passing through." She sat up, muscles protesting. "You should have woken me. Could have taken a turn at watch." "Next time." He handed her the coffee. It was strong enough to strip paint, but she drank it gratefully. "Been thinking about what you said, about running." "Yeah, there's a place, north of here, up in Montana territory. Town called Haven Falls. Man I know runs a trading post there. Decent fellow, keeps his mouth shut. You could start fresh. New name, new life." "You mean leave, separate? Traveling with me puts a target on your back. Every bounty hunter in 3 states wants that reward. You didn't sign up for that." She sipped the coffee, considering. A fresh start sounded like a fairy tale, something that happened to other people. But then, so did sharing coffee with an outlaw in a hidden canyon. "What about you?" "I've got business to finish with Benedict. Money to distribute, scores to settle." He stared into the fire. "Not the kind of life to drag someone else into." "Seems to me I dragged myself. You just offered the horse." A faint smile crossed his weathered face. "That you did." They packed up as the sun climbed higher. Blackwood saddled the stallion while she scattered the fire's ashes. The simple domesticity of it felt strange, like playing at being normal people with normal lives. As they prepared to mount up, she made a decision. "Sarah," he paused, one foot in the stirrup. "What?" "My name was Sarah Morrison. Thought you should know in case..." She shrugged. "In case it matters." He swung into the saddle, then reached down to pull her up. "It matters." They rode out of the valley as the morning warmed. She wrapped her arms around his waist, feeling less like a passenger and more like a partner. The canyon walls rose around them, red stone painted gold by sunlight. Behind them lay Coyote Gulch and a past full of ghosts. Ahead waited unknown trails and uncertain futures. But for the first time in memory, she wasn't running from something. She was riding toward it. Whatever it was, wherever it led, she wouldn't face it alone. The most wanted man in the West guided his horse through the narrow passage, and the woman who'd forgotten her own name held on tight. 2 outlaws, 2 ghosts, 2 souls who'd learned that sometimes the only way to stop running is to find someone worth standing still for. The desert stretched before them, vast and unforgiving. But the sun was warm, the sky was clear, and the road ahead was theirs to choose. For now, that was enough. 3 days out from the canyon, they spotted the dust cloud. Sarah saw it first, a brown smudge against the horizon, too steady to be wind-driven. "Riders," she said into Blackwood's ear. 6, maybe 7. He reined in the stallion, squinting at the distant disturbance. "Good eyes, that's Marshal Tate's crew, bounty hunters out of Amarillo. Friends of yours? We've danced before. Tate's smart, careful, not like most of the glory hounds chasing reward money." Blackwood guided the horse off the trail, down into a dry wash. "He knows these hills better than anyone except me." The wash provided cover, but slowed their progress. The stallion picked his way carefully over loose stones and brittle vegetation. Above them, the rim of the gulch framed a strip of harsh blue sky. "How'd they find us? Tate's got a Comanche tracker. Eagle Claw, they call him. Could follow a ghost through a thunderstorm." Sarah's hand drifted to her knife. "What's the plan?" "We split up. I'll lead them north into the maze. You take the horse. Head west to Juniper Creek. There's a way station. There, run by a woman named Rosa Delgado. Tell her I sent you. She'll know." The word came out sharper than she'd intended. Blackwood twisted in the saddle to look at her. "This isn't your fight," he said. "Became my fight when I got on this horse. Besides," she added, "your plan's backward. They're hunting Jessie Blackwood, not some nameless woman. I should be the decoy." "Absolutely. Not, listen to me. You said Tate's smart. He knows you work alone. Sees us split up, he'll follow you every time. But if I take the stallion, wear your hat and duster." She met his eyes. From a distance in this terrain, they might buy it. "Long enough for you to circle behind them." Blackwood's jaw worked like he was chewing on arguments. Finally, he sighed. "You ever fired a gun?" "Once or twice." He drew one of his Colts, checked the cylinder, and passed it back. 6 shots. Make them count. The gun was heavier than she expected, the grip worn smooth by years of use. "Where do I lead them?" "Box Canyon, about 8 miles northeast. Looks like a dead end, but there's a passage through the eastern wall. Narrow, only one rider at a time. Once you're through, there's a grove of boulders. Good defensive position." "And you?" "I'll be right behind them. Give me 20 minutes to find high ground, then break cover. Ride hard, make dust. Let them see you." They dismounted. Blackwood pulled a spare shirt from his saddlebags, along with ammunition and the last of their water. Sarah shrugged into his duster, settled his hat on her head. The clothes smelled of leather and gun oil. Sarah. He caught her arm as she prepared to mount. "If something goes wrong—" "It won't. If it does," he continued firmly, "don't try to be a hero. Drop the gun, surrender. Tate's tough but fair. He'll bring you in alive." She swung into the saddle. The stallion shifted beneath her, sensing the unfamiliar rider. "See you at Box Canyon." Blackwood stepped back. For a moment, something passed between them. Not quite trust, not yet, but the possibility of it. Sarah wheeled the horse and spurred him up the wash. 20 minutes passed like 20 hours. She waited in the shadow of a limestone ridge, watching the dust cloud grow closer. The Colt sat heavy in her hand. 6 shots, 6 chances to live or die. The stallion stampede, eager to run. She patted his neck. "Easy, boy. Almost time." When she judged the moment right, she broke from cover. The stallion exploded into motion, hooves thundering against hardpan. She leaned forward, hat pulled low, duster billowing behind her. To her eyes, she might have been Jessie Blackwood, might have been anyone. A shout went up from the pursuing riders. The chase was on. The stallion was magnificent. He flew across the broken ground like he had wings, jumping obstacles she barely saw coming. Behind them, the pursuit spread out in a ragged line. She counted 7 riders, plus 1 hanging back, probably the tracker, reading the ground. She led them through a series of switchbacks, always angling northeast toward Box Canyon. The landscape blurred past. Red rocks, scattered juniper, the occasional bleached bones of some unlucky creature. The first shot cracked across the desert air. Wild, too far behind to be a real threat. But it meant they were committed now. No. Turning back, she pushed the stallion harder. The canyon mouth appeared ahead, a dark slash in the cliff face. As Blackwood had said, it looked like a dead end from this angle. She had to trust his knowledge, trust that the passage existed. More shots. Closer now. A bullet whined off a rock to her left. The stallion never faltered. They plunged into the canyon. Walls rose on either side, red stones stained black by centuries of flash floods. The passage narrowed until her knees nearly scraped the walls. Behind her, the pursuing horses slowed, riders cursing as they bottlenecked at the entrance. There, a crack in the eastern wall, barely wide enough for horse and rider. She aimed for it, praying Blackwood's memory was accurate. The passage twisted, turned, narrowed further. For one heart-stopping moment, she thought they were trapped. Then daylight appeared ahead. They burst through into a circular depression, surrounded by house-sized boulders. Sarah wheeled the stallion around, taking stock. Good cover, clear sightlines back through the passage. A defensive position, just as Blackwood had promised. But defending it alone against 7 men, she dismounted, led the horse behind the largest boulder, and checked the colt. Still, 6 shots. She'd yet to fire. The first pursuer emerged from the passage. Sarah recognized him from wanted posters. Of his own, Dan Harlan, a killer with a reputation for cruelty. He spotted her immediately, raised his rifle. She fired first. The colt bucked in her hand. Harlan tumbled backward off his horse, clutching his shoulder. Not a killing shot, but it sent the right message. "That's far enough," she shouted, trying to deepen her voice. "Next one gets it in the head." Silence from the passage. Then a different voice, calm and measured. "That you, Blackwood? Don't sound like yourself." Marshall Tate. She'd heard stories. Former Texas Ranger turned bounty hunter, a man who always got his quarry. "Throat dry," she called back. "Been a long ride. Why don't you come on out? We can discuss this like civilized folk. Nothing civilized about a lynching party. Now that's unfair. You know I always bring my bounties while breathing. Dead men can't speak in their own defense." Sarah shifted position, keeping the passage. It covered. Where was Blackwood? He should have been here by now. "Tell you what," Tate continued, "throw out your guns, walk out peaceful-like. I give you my word you'll make it to trial." "Your word?" She let scorn color her voice. "Like the word you gave Tom McKendrick before your boys shot him in the back." A pause. McKendrick drew first. On an empty chamber. Convenient how dead men. "Can't contradict your version." Movement in the passage. Sarah tensed, finger on the trigger, but instead of another rider, a small object arced through the air. It hit the ground and rolled, trailing smoke. Dynamite! She dove behind the boulder. As the explosion rocked the canyon, dust and debris filled the air. The stallion whinnied, dancing sideways, but held steady. "Just a quarter stick," Tate called. "Next one's bigger. Last chance, Blackwood." Sarah's mind raced. 6 shots against 7 men, and they had explosives. The defensive position had become a death trap. She needed thunder. Not from the sky, but from the rim of the canyon. Rifle fire, rapid and precise. She risked a glance upward and saw a familiar silhouette against the sky. Blackwood had found his high ground. Chaos erupted in the passage. Horses screamed. Men shouted. More gunfire from multiple directions now. Sarah added her own, firing at shapes in the dust cloud. The colt kicked once, twice. A rider burst from the passage. Eagle Claw, the Comanche tracker. His horse was hit, stumbling. Sarah's third shot caught him center mass. He pitched sideways, vanished into the billowing dust. More rifle fire from above. Measured, methodical, each shot found its mark. Sarah counted bodies falling, horses running riderless. Then, as suddenly as it began, silence. She stayed low, watching the passage. One bullet left in the colt. The dust began to settle, revealing shapes on the ground. Some moved. Most didn't. Sarah? Blackwood's. Voice from the rim. She stood slowly, keeping the gun ready. Clear, Tate's running. Lost his taste for the hunt. Resta down. She heard him descending, loose rock cascading from invisible handholds. Moments later, he emerged from behind a boulder, rifle in hand. His shirt was torn, a line of blood across one cheek. "You're hurt." Scratch. Tate's tracker was better than I gave him credit for, almost got behind me. He looked at the bodies in the passage, then at her. "You all right?" She nodded, suddenly aware her hands were shaking. Adrenaline aftermath. She'd been in fights before, but nothing like this. Nothing so calculated. Blackwood approached one of the wounded men, Harlan, still clutching his shoulder. The outlaw kicked the man's gun away, then knelt beside him, still breathing. "He'll live if he gets to a doctor." The others? 2 dead, 3 wounded. Eagle Claw won't track anyone again. He stood, wiping blood from his cheek. Tate got away. Clean. He'll be back. With more men. Probably, but not today. He'll need time to lick his wounds, hire new guns. Blackwood retrieved his horse from the passage, checked him for injuries. We bought ourselves some breathing room. Sarah looked at the carnage around them. "This what it's always like? Riding with you?" "More or less." Having second thoughts, she holstered the Colt, surprised to find her hands had stopped shaking. "Ask me again tomorrow." They left the wounded where they lay. Harsh, maybe, but they couldn't spare water or medical supplies. Tate would circle back for his men once he was sure the coast was clear. As they rode out of the canyon, Blackwood glanced sideways at her. That was smart thinking, the decoy plan. Risky as hell, but smart. Seemed logical. They were hunting. "You, not me." Most people panic under pressure. You got calmer. That's a rare quality. She shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "Just survival instinct. Maybe, or maybe you're discovering what you're capable of when you stop running." They made camp that night in a grove of cottonwoods beside a small spring. Real water, not just seepage from rocks. Sarah washed the dust and gunpowder from her face, watched the water run brown, then clear. Blackwood tended a rabbit he'd shot, spitting it over the fire. The smell made her stomach growl. After days of jerky and hardtack, fresh meat seemed like a feast. "Tell me about Benedict," she said. "This railroad baron you robbed?" Blackwood turned the spit, fat dripping into the flames. "Randolph Benedict. Came west 10 years ago with Eastern money and no scruples. Started buying land along proposed railroad routes. When folks wouldn't sell, he got creative. Creative how? Hired guns, burned barns, poisoned wells. Had the territorial governor in his pocket, so complaints went nowhere. Built his fortune on other people's misery. And you decided to rob him." "Rob? No. I took back what he stole. Every dollar in that bank came from families he destroyed. I'm just returning it to its rightful owners." Sarah studied his profile in the firelight. "How many families?" 43. "I've got a list. Names, locations, what they're owed. Already delivered to 12. Rest are scattered from here to California. That's a lot of traveling, lot of exposure. Worth it to see Benedict squirm. Man like that, money's all he understands. Every dollar I take hurts him more than a bullet would." The rabbit finished cooking. They ate in companionable silence, grease shining on their fingers. Stars emerged overhead, brilliant in the clear desert air. "What happens when the list is done?" Sarah asked. "When will all the families are paid?" "Haven't thought that far ahead. Maybe head north, Canada. Start fresh where nobody knows my name." Sounds lonely. Better than a noose. She cleaned her hands on grass, then leaned back against a cottonwood trunk. "Ever think about fighting him directly? Benedict, instead of this cat and mouse with his money?" Thought about it, but killing him would just make him a martyr to his rich friends. This way I'm bleeding him slow, making him feel what those families felt. Helpless. Desperate. There's more to it than that. The way you talk about those settlers. This is personal. Blackwood was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice was distant. "Had a sister once. Mary, sweetest soul God ever made. She married a farmer, good man named Robert Carlson. They homesteaded a patch of ground right in the path of Benedict's railroad. The fire popped, sending sparks skyward. Benedict wanted their land. Robert said no, they had legal claim, papers all proper and filed. Blackwood's hands clenched into fists. 3 weeks later, their barn burned. Week after that, their well went bad. Benedict's men made it clear, sell or suffer worse. They held out? Robert did, right up until they found him shot in his own field. Hunting accident, the sheriff called it. Mary was 8 months pregnant. His voice went flat, emotionless. She lost the baby. Grief and stress, doctor said. Sold the land for pennies on the dollar, moved back east. Haven't heard from her since. Sarah absorbed this, understanding now the depth of his vendetta. I'm sorry. Don't be. Just understand, this isn't about playing hero. It's about making a man pay for his sins in the only currency he values. They sat quietly as the fire burned lower. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote called to its pack. The sound raised goosebumps on Sarah's arms. Those men today, she said, the bounty hunters, they're just trying to make a living. I know, that's why I aimed to wound, not kill when I could. But make no mistake, they'd have put bullets in both of us for that reward money. In this life, sometimes it's them or us. And Tate, you let him go. Tate's different. He's got a code, brings his bounties in alive, treats them decent. Man-like. That you don't kill unless you have to. Blackwood's expression hardened. But if he comes for us again, I won't hesitate. Fair warning. Sarah pulled her knees to her chest, feeling the weight of the life she'd stumbled into. How do you stand? It, the constant running, fighting, looking over your shoulder? You tell me. You've been doing it longer than I have. She considered this. It was different. I was just existing, surviving day to day. This feels like something more, like there's a purpose to it. Dangerous thinking. Start believing your own legend, you get sloppy. Then you get dead. Not a legend, just meaning, hard to explain. Blackwood added wood to the fire. Try. She searched for words. All those years running, I was nobody. No name, no past, no future. Just a ghost drifting from town to town. But this... She gestured, vaguely at their camp, at him. This feels real, like I'm finally awake. Careful what you wish for. Being awake means feeling everything, good and bad. I'll take that trade. He smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, revealing the man he might have been in a different life. Get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow we start working down my list. Next family's in Cedar Ridge, about 60 miles west. Sarah stretched out on her bedroll, using the saddle as a pillow. Blackwood. Yeah? What you said earlier about me discovering what I'm capable of. Were you talking about the fighting, or something else? He considered the question. Both, maybe. Fighting's just the surface. Real discovery is finding out who you are when everything's stripped away, when you've got nothing left to lose. And who am I? That's for you to figure out. But from what? I've seen... He met her eyes across the fire. You're someone who stands their ground. Someone who faces what comes instead of running. That's more than most can say. She closed her eyes, feeling the day's exhaustion settle into her bones. Hope you're right. So do I. Now sleep. Long ride tomorrow. As she drifted off, Sarah reflected on the strange turns life could take. A week ago she'd been nobody, going nowhere. Now she rode with the most wanted man in the West, fighting injustice with bullets and stolen gold. It wasn't the life she'd chosen, but increasingly it felt like the life she was meant to lead. The fire crackled, the coyotes sang, and for the first time in memory, Sarah Morrison slept without dreams of the past, chasing her through the darkness. Cedar Ridge sat at the bottom of a valley like a discarded toy, its wooden buildings weathered grey by wind and neglect. From their vantage point on the eastern rim, Sarah counted maybe 24 structures, a general store, saloon, blacksmith, and scattered houses in various states of disrepair. Doesn't look like much, she observed. Used to be more. Blackwood pulled a folded paper from his vest, smoothed it against his saddle horn. Before Benedict's railroad bypassed it for Culver City. Killed the town slow, like a gut-shot deer. Sarah studied the list over his shoulder. Names in careful script, amounts owed, locations. Her finger stopped on one entry. William Tanner, Cedar Ridge, $3,200. That's our man. Runs the general store. Benedict's thugs burned his warehouse, destroying 6 months of inventory. Insurance wouldn't pay. Called it an act of God. God wears a lot of different faces out here. That he does. Blackwood folded the paper, tucked it away. We go in quiet. No sense advertising our presence. They descended a narrow trail, the horses picking their way carefully down the loose shale. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the valley floor. As they drew closer, Sarah noticed things she'd missed from above. Boarded windows, collapsed roofs, the skeletal remains of what might have been a church. Ghost town in the making, she murmured. Benedict's specialty. He doesn't just take land, he destroys communities, scatters families like dust in the wind. The main street was deserted except for a yellow dog sleeping in a patch of sunlight. It raised its head as they passed, decided they weren't worth barking at, and went back to sleep. Blackwood reined up outside the general store. A painted sign hung crooked above the door. Tanner's Dry Goods and Supplies. Through the dusty window, Sarah glimpsed shelves more empty than full. Wait here, Blackwood said. Keep watch. For what? That dog? For trouble. It has a way of finding me. He dismounted, adjusted his gun belt, and pushed through the store's door. A bell jangled, the sound sharp in the afternoon quiet. Sarah remained on the stallion, scanning the empty street. The yellow dog had disappeared. Minutes crawled by. She heard voices from inside the store, Blackwood's low rumble, another man's higher pitch. No shouting, which seemed good. Then a woman's voice joined in, shrill with suspicion. Movement caught her eye. 3 riders appeared at the far end of the street, moving slow. Too slow. Sarah's hand drifted to the Colt at her hip. The riders spread out as they approached, a familiar tactical formation. The store door burst open. Blackwood emerged, face grim. Company. Saw them. Friends of yours? Pinkerton men. Benedict's private army. He swung into the saddle. Back door, now! They wheeled their horses into the alley beside the store. Behind them, hoofbeats quickened. A shot cracked out, the bullet splintering wood, inches from Sarah's head. The alley opened into a maze of backyards and outbuildings. Blackwood led without hesitation, weaving between chicken coops and privies. More shots. A woman screamed from one of the houses. They burst onto a side street, nearly colliding with a wagon loaded with hay. The driver cursed and hauled on his reins. Blackwood didn't slow, guiding his horse in a leap that cleared the wagon's tongue. Sarah followed, feeling the stallion gather himself, and saw. The Pinkertons weren't so lucky. She heard crashes, more, cursing, the sound of horses refusing jumps. The hay wagon had bought them seconds, maybe minutes. The mill, Blackwood shouted, pointing toward a large structure on the town's edge. Stone walls, good cover. They raced toward it, hooves pounding on packed earth. The mill stood 3 stories tall, its water wheel frozen in place above a dry creek bed. They dismounted running, leading the horses through a gap where the main doors had rotted away. Inside, dust motes danced in shafts of sunlight through broken windows. Machinery stood silent, grinding stones, wooden gears, leather belts that hadn't moved in years. Upstairs, Blackwood said. Better sight lines. They climbed rickety stairs to the second floor. Through a window, Sarah watched the Pinkertons regroup on the main street. 5 men now, not 3. Reinforcements had arrived. Persistent bunch, she observed. Benedict pays well for results. Blackwood checked his rifle, counted ammunition. They'll try to wait us out. Time's on their side. Unless we make it expensive for them. He glanced at her. What are you thinking? Sarah studied the mill's layout. This place. All this old machinery. Dry wood, flour dust in the air. Wouldn't take much to burn it down? That's drastic. So's dying. Besides, she added, it's already dead. Has been for years. Might as well give it a Viking funeral. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. You're full of surprises. I'm practical. We need a distraction to reach the horses. Gunfire erupted from below. Bullets punched through floorboards, showering them with splinters. They dropped flat, crawling toward the far wall. Changed their minds about waiting, Blackwood said. More shots, from multiple angles now. The Pinkertons had surrounded the building. Glass shattered. A ricochet whined off metal somewhere in the darkness. Sarah spotted what she needed, an old oil lamp hanging from a beam, its reservoir still half full. She stretched for it, fingertips just reaching the base. "Cover me," she said. Blackwood rose to one knee, rifle shouldering smooth as water. He fired methodically, picking his shots. Each report was answered by return fire, but he'd bought her the seconds she needed. Sarah grabbed the lamp, unscrewed the reservoir. Oil sloshed, pungent and flammable. She crawled toward the stairs, trailing liquid across the wooden floor. "Whatever you're planning," Blackwood called, "do it fast. They're bringing up more men." She reached the grinding stones, massive wheels, of granite standing vertical. Flour dust coated everything, walls, machinery, their own clothes. She splashed oil liberally, creating a trail back toward their position. A voice from outside, amplified by a speaking trumpet. "Blackwood! This is Agent Carlyle, Pinkerton National Detective Agency. You're surrounded. Surrender now, and we'll bring you in alive." "Tempting offer," Blackwood shouted back, "but I'll pass." "Don't be a fool. You're outnumbered 6-1. Sarah pulled. Matches from her pocket, taken from Blackwood's saddlebags days ago. Her hands were steady as she struck one, watched the flame bloom. "Actually," she called out, "it's 6-2, and we're about to even those odds." She touched the match to the oil trail. Fire raced across the floor like something alive. Where it met flour dust, small explosions puffed and crackled. Within seconds, half the second floor was ablaze. "Time to go," Blackwood said. They ran for the stairs as flames spread with terrifying speed. The dry wood, the years of dust, the afternoon heat, everything conspired to turn the mill into an inferno. Smoke billowed, thick and choking. The ground floor was chaos. Pinkertons who'd entered the building now fought to escape. Flames dropped through gaps in the ceiling. The air itself seemed to burn. Through the smoke, Sarah saw their horses rearing, against their reins. She reached them first, soothing the stallion with touch and voice. Blackwood covered their retreat, firing at shapes in the murk. They mounted in one fluid motion and spurred toward the exit. A Pinkerton appeared from the smoke, trying to block their path. Sarah drew the Colt and fired without conscious thought. The man spun away, clutching his shoulder. Then they were out, bursting into clean air like divers breaking the surface. Behind them, the mill was fully engulfed. Flames shot from windows. The roof sagged, then collapsed in a shower of sparks. The Pinkertons had bigger problems than pursuing outlaws. The fire threatened to spread to neighboring buildings. Men ran with buckets, shouting orders, trying to organize a fire line. Blackwood and Sarah didn't wait to see the outcome. They galloped hard for the edge of town, then up the valley's eastern slope. At the rim, they paused to look back. Cedar Ridge glowed orange in the gathering dusk. The mill was gone, reduced to a burning skeleton, but the fire seemed contained. The other buildings safe. "Well," Blackwood said, "that's one way to leave town." Sarah holstered the Colt. "Did you deliver?" "The money!" "Started to." Tanner was suspicious, wanted to know where it came from. His wife was worse, thought I was trying to buy something improper. He shook his head. "Sometimes doing right is harder than doing wrong." "But you left it?" "On his counter. He'll find it when he opens tomorrow. If he's smart, he'll take it and leave town before Benedict's men come asking questions. They rode in silence for a while, putting distance between themselves and the burning town. The stars emerged, cold and distant. That was quick thinking, Blackwood said eventually. The fire, most people freeze in situations like that. I told you, survival instinct. No, it's more than that. You've got a tactical mind. See angles. Others miss. He reined in, turning to face her. Where'd you learn to think like that? Sarah considered the question. When you spend years running, hiding, you learn to read situations fast. Exit routes, weapons at hand, who's a threat and who's not. After a while, it becomes second nature. Military men train for years to develop those instincts. The world's been my training ground. Failed lessons tend to be fatal. They made camp in a box canyon 10 miles from Cedar Ridge, sheltered by overhanging rock. No fire tonight. The glow might attract unwanted attention. They ate cold biscuits and dried beef, washed down with warm water from their canteens. Next name on the list is Prosperity, Blackwood said. 2 days' ride if we push. But after today, Benedict will double his hunters. Place will be crawling with Pinkertons. So we wait, or find another approach. The family, the Hendersons, they're struggling. Every day we delay is another day they might lose their farm. Sarah leaned back against the rock wall, studying. The stars through the canyon's narrow opening. What if we split up? We've had this conversation. Hear me out. Not permanently, just for this delivery. I go to Prosperity ahead of you. Scout the situation, find the Hendersons. You follow a day behind. Come in quiet once I've mapped the threats. Blackwood frowned. You'd be alone, unknown territory, no backup. I've been alone before, and they're not hunting me, they're hunting you. A woman traveling alone attracts less attention than Jessie Blackwood. It's too dangerous. Everything we do is dangerous. Question is, what gives us the best odds? He was quiet for a long moment. You don't even know what the Hendersons look like. You can describe them, give me details. I'm good with faces. And if something goes wrong, then I handle it. Or I run. I'm good at both. Blackwood rubbed his jaw. A gesture she'd learned meant he was weighing options. I don't like it. But you know I'm right. Maybe. He pulled the list from his vest, unfolded it by moonlight. Thomas and Mary Henderson. They've got 3 kids. Boy about 16, twin girls maybe 12. Tom's missing his left arm from the war. Mary walks with a limp childhood injury. How much are they owed? 4,000. Benedict's men poisoned their cattle, claimed it was disease, forced them to burn the whole herd. They're barely hanging. Sarah memorized the details. Where's their place? North side of town, about 2 miles out. White farmhouse with green shutters. Windmill in the front yard. I'll find them. Day after tomorrow, you meet me at... She thought, is there a church in Prosperity? Baptist church on Main Street. But I'm not exactly the church-going type. Cemetery, then, behind the church, just after dark. If I'm not there, something's gone wrong and you ride on. I don't leave people behind. You do if staying gets you killed. Those other families need their money too. He didn't answer, which she took as reluctant agreement. They bedded down on opposite sides of their small camp. Sarah lay awake, listening to Blackwood's breathing deepen into sleep. She thought about the strange path that had led her here, from a blood-soaked room in a nameless town to fighting alongside the most wanted man in the West. Her mother's face drifted through her memory, as it often did in quiet moments. Not the face from that final night, but from before. Laughing at some silly joke, brushing Sarah's hair by lamplight, making a game of poverty, pretending their single room was a castle and their stale bread was cake. I'm trying to do something. Good, Mama, she whispered to the stars. Hope that makes up for everything else. No answer came, of course. The dead kept their own counsel. Morning brought complications. Blackwood woke with a fever, skin hot and clammy. The cut on his cheek, the one he'd dismissed as a scratch, was red and swollen. Infection, Sarah diagnosed. Needs cleaning, probably lancing. I'm fine. He tried to stand, swayed, sat back down hard. Just need water. You need medicine. Rest, neither of which we have. She felt his forehead, frowned at the heat. Change of plans. I'm taking you to Prosperity. There's bound to be a doctor. No. Too dangerous. They'll recognize Jesse Blackwood, not a sick man slumped in his saddle. She was already packing their gear. We'll dirty you up, change your appearance. You'll be my uncle, injured in a mining accident. Sarah, argue later. Move now. She helped him onto his horse, noting how heavily he leaned on her. The wound must have been worse than he'd let on, probably had been festering for days. Typical man, too proud to admit weakness. They rode slowly, Blackwood swaying but staying. Mounted, Sarah led, picking the easiest path, avoiding rough terrain that might jar him. Every few miles, she checked his bandage, gave him water, made sure he was still conscious. By afternoon, he was delirious, mumbling about his sister, about Benedict, about debts unpaid. Sarah tied him to his saddle with rope from their supplies, led both horses from the ground. Stay with me, she said, just a few more hours. He didn't answer. His eyes were closed, face grey beneath the fever flush. Prosperity appeared as the sun touched the western mountains, bigger than Cedar Ridge, more prosperous despite its ironic name. Sarah counted several dozen buildings, smoke rising from chimneys, people moving on the streets. She stopped at a water. Trough on the town's edge splashed Blackwood's face, tried to rouse him. His eyes opened, unfocused. Listen, she said urgently. You're my uncle, Seth Morrison. We're from Nevada, heading to Colorado. You got hurt in a rockfall, understand? He nodded vaguely. It would have to do. The doctor's office was easy to find, a white building with a shingle reading, Dr. Marcus Holloway, physician and surgeon. Sarah hitched the horses and helped Blackwood inside. The waiting room was empty except for an elderly woman knitting in the corner. She looked up, took in Blackwood's condition, and immediately called toward a back room. Doctor, emergency. Dr. Holloway appeared, a thin man with steel-rimmed spectacles and careful hands. He took one look at Blackwood and gestured toward. An examination room. Bring him in here. What happened? Rockfall, Sarah lied smoothly. Cut his face on a sharp stone. Seemed fine at first, but infection. I can smell it. The doctor was already cutting away the bandage. How long ago? 3 days, maybe 4. Should have come sooner. This is badly septic. He glanced at her. You his daughter? Niece. He's all the family I've got. Something in her voice must have convinced him. His manner softened. I'll do what I can, but he's going to need rest, proper care. There's a boarding house down the street, Mrs. Clearwater's. Clean rooms, good food. Tell her I sent you. Sarah nodded, playing her role. Inside, her mind raced. Staying in Prosperity meant risk, but leaving meant Blackwood might die. The doctor worked efficiently, cleaning the wound, applying carbolic acid. Blackwood groaned but didn't fully wake. Good. Alert. He might say something to give them away. The infection spread to his blood, Holloway said. I've seen men pull through worse, but he'll need watching. Fever should break in a day or 2. If it doesn't... He didn't finish the sentence. Sarah paid with coins from Blackwood's money. Belt, careful not to let the doctor see how much she carried. Then, with Holloway's help, they got Blackwood back on his horse for the short ride to the boarding house. Mrs. Clearwater was everything the doctor promised. Clean, efficient, discreet. She installed them in a corner room without asking questions, brought beef broth and fresh linens. Sarah sat beside Blackwood's bed as darkness fell. He tossed and muttered, fighting battles in his dreams. She bathed his face with cool water, forced willow bark tea between his lips, and watched the fever consume him. Don't you quit on me, she whispered. Too many people need you, need what you're trying to do. He grabbed her wrist, eyes opening wide. For a moment, she thought he was conscious. Then he spoke, voice clear but distant. "Mary, that you?" His sister. Sarah's throat tightened. "Rest now. Everything's going to be fine." His grip relaxed. He sank back into delirium. She sat watching him breathe, wondering how she'd gotten here. A week ago, she'd been alone, anonymous, responsible for no one but herself. Now she was nursing a wanted outlaw in a town full of enemies, carrying enough money to make her a target, committed to a mission that wasn't even hers. But maybe that was the point. Maybe you found your purpose not by seeking it, but by stumbling into it when you least expected. Choosing to stand when running would be easier. Through the window she could see the Baptist church the doctor had mentioned. Tomorrow, if Blackwood improved, she'd scout the Hendersons' farm, continue the mission with or without him. For now, she kept watch. The most wanted man in the West lay helpless as a child, dependent on a woman whose name he barely knew. Trust, she was learning, came in many forms. The night deepened, the fever raged, and Sarah Morrison, who'd sworn never to care about anyone again, discovered that some promises were made to be broken. Dawn painted the boarding house walls pink and gold. Sarah had dozed fitfully in the chair beside Blackwood's bed, jerking awake every time his breathing changed. His fever had peaked around 3 in the morning. She'd thought she was losing him then. His skin burning, breath rattling in his chest. But he'd fought through it. Now, as sunlight crept across the floor, his forehead felt cooler. The crisis had passed. "Water," he croaked. She helped him drink, studying his face. Color was returning, the grey pallor fading. His eyes focused on her properly for the first time in 2 days. "Where are we?" "Prosperity. Mrs. Clearwater's boarding house." "You've been sick." He tried to sit up, winced, fell back. "The Hendersons can wait another day. You nearly died." "How long?" 2 nights. The doctor says you're lucky. Another day without treatment." She didn't finish. Blackwood closed his eyes. "Should have left me. Continued the mission." "I don't. Abandoned partners, even stubborn ones who hide their injuries." A knock at the door interrupted them. Mrs. Clearwater entered with a breakfast tray, porridge, fresh bread, coffee that smelled like heaven. "Good to see you awake, Mr. Morrison," she said, setting the tray on the bedside table. "Your niece has been worried sick." Blackwood's eyes flicked to Sarah, understanding the cover story. "She's a good girl, takes after her mother." Mrs. Clearwater smiled. "I'll send the doctor round later. You just rest now." When she'd gone, Blackwood raised an eyebrow. "My niece." "Uncle Seth. You were delirious, might have said anything. Seemed safer than claiming to be married. Too many questions about rings, family history. Smart." He managed a few spoonfuls of porridge before exhaustion overtook him. "The Hendersons. You should go. I'll be fine here." "You can barely lift a spoon." "Mrs. Clearwater will look after me. The family needs that money." "Every day matters." Sarah studied him, torn between caution and duty. He was right. The mission came first. But leaving him vulnerable in a town that might be crawling with Benedict's men. "I'll go tonight," she decided. "Scout the farm. Make contact if it's safe. But I'm taking precautions." She spent the morning exploring Prosperity, mapping escape routes and potential threats. The town was busier than Cedar Ridge, with actual commerce flowing through its streets. A railroad spur connected it to the main line. Benedict's influence, no doubt. At the general store, she bought supplies and listened to gossip. The shopkeeper, a garrulous man named Henley, was happy to talk. "Pinkertons were through here yesterday," he mentioned while wrapping her purchases. "Looking for that outlaw, Blackwood. Posted new wanted signs everywhere." "Exciting times," Sarah said neutrally. "Bad for business if you ask me. All these gunmen riding through, honest folk get nervous. Take the Hendersons, good people, but that trouble with their cattle last year? Now they barely come to town. Scared, probably. The Hendersons, farm family north of town, used to be prosperous until they lost their herd. Some disease, they said, but Tom Henderson swears it was poison. Course, without proof. Henley shrugged. Sarah filed the information away. Sounds like they've had hard times. That's the truth. Surprised they're still holding on. Most folks would have sold out by now. He leaned closer, voice dropping. Between you and me, I think they're hoping for a miracle. That afternoon, Dr. Holloway confirmed Blackwood was recovering well. Keep him resting another day or two. The infection's clearing, but he's weak. Push too hard too soon, it could come back worse. Sarah thanked him, paid for his services, and spent the rest of the day playing nurse. Blackwood chafed at the inactivity, but she kept him in bed through sheer force of will. As evening fell, she prepared for her scouting mission. Dark clothes, hair pinned up under a hat, the knife at her belt. She'd leave the colt with Blackwood, too recognizable if she was searched. Remember, Blackwood said, white farmhouse, green shutters. Tom's missing his left arm. If something feels wrong, I run. We've been through this. Sarah, he caught her hand. Be careful. These people have already lost so much. Don't let them lose hope too. She squeezed his fingers. Get some sleep. I'll be back before dawn. The Henderson farm sat on a rise overlooking wheat fields. Even in the gathering darkness, Sarah could see the signs of struggle, fences needing repair, a barn with a partially collapsed roof, equipment left rusting in the yard. She approached carefully, using a dry creek bed for cover. The white farmhouse stood like a ghost against the darkening sky, windows glowing with lamplight. The promised windmill creaked in the evening breeze. Voices drifted from the kitchen, a woman's gentle tones, children talking over each other, a man's deeper rumble. Normal family sounds that twisted something in Sarah's chest. She was debating her approach when hoofbeats made her freeze. 3 riders came up the farm road, moving with purpose. Even in the dim light, she recognized the bearing of lawmen, or men who thought they were. Sarah pressed herself into the creek bank's shadows. The riders dismounted at the front door, spurs jingling. One knocked, heavy and demanding. The door opened, spilling yellow light. A man's silhouette, tall, one sleeve pinned up at the shoulder. Tom Henderson. Evening, Mr. Henderson. The lead rider's voice carried clearly. Mind if we come in? Few questions about strangers in the area? It's late. My family's just sitting. Down to supper. Won't take long. You heard about the trouble in Cedar Ridge. Mill burned down. We're looking for the ones responsible. Henderson's voice hardened. I don't know anything about that. Maybe not. But you've had your own troubles with certain elements. Thought you might be sympathetic to anyone fighting Benedict's interests. I've got no quarrel with anyone. Just want to farm my land in peace. Course you do. But times being what they are, man's got to choose sides. You either help us catch these outlaws, or folks might start wondering where your loyalties lie. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Sarah's hand went to her knife, though what she could do against 3 armed men, my loyalties, Henderson said slowly, are to my family. Now, unless you've got legal cause to be here, I'll ask you to leave. Legal cause? The rider laughed. Mister, we are the law out here. Benedict's word carries more weight than any judge's. You do well to remember. That! He stepped forward, forcing Henderson back. The other 2 riders followed him inside. The door closed, cutting off the light. Sarah crept closer, torn between caution and concern. Through a window, she saw the riders spreading out in the front room. Henderson stood protective near his family. A woman with worry lines etched deep. A teenage boy trying to look brave, 2 girls clutching each other. The lead rider picked up a framed photograph from the mantel. Nice family. Shame if something happened to them, like what happened to your cattle. That was disease. Was it? Funny how disease strikes so selective, almost like it knew which cows to target. He set the photo down hard. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to keep your eyes open. Anyone comes around, strangers, people asking questions, offering help, you're going to send word. There's money in it for cooperative citizens. And if I don't? Well, diseases are unpredictable things. Never know what might catch sick next. Crops, horses. His gaze lingered on the children. People. Mrs. Henderson pulled her daughters closer. The boy stepped forward, fists clenched, but his father caught his shoulder. "We understand each other," Henderson said, voice flat. "Good man, we'll be checking in regular. Remember, Benedict rewards loyalty." The riders left, boot heels loud on wooden floors. Sarah waited until their hoofbeats faded before approaching the house. She knocked softly, using the pattern Blackwood. Had taught her 2 short, 3 long, 1 short. The door opened a crack. Henderson peered out, his one good arm holding something behind the doorframe. A shotgun, probably. "Mr. Henderson." "I'm a friend. Hear about your cattle, about what Benedict owes you." His eyes widened. "You're with—" "Best not say names, May." "I come in." He stepped aside. The family huddled in the kitchen, watching her with mixtures of hope and fear. Sarah removed her hat, letting her hair fall loose, less threatening as a woman. "Those men," she said, "they'll be watching your farm. Let them watch. We've got nothing to hide." But his voice shook slightly. "You're right to be scared. They mean their threats. But there are people fighting back. People who think folks like you deserve justice." "Justice?" Mrs. Henderson spoke for the first time. "Mister, justice died in this valley the day Benedict arrived. All we've got now is survival." "Maybe. But what if someone wanted to balance the scales, pay back what was stolen?" The adults exchanged glances. Hope, Sarah realized, was almost as dangerous as despair. Both could get you killed. "We were told," she continued carefully, "that you lost cattle worth $4,000, that the loss nearly broke you." Tom Henderson sat heavily in a kitchen chair. "Who told you that?" "Someone who keeps careful records. Someone who believes debts should be paid." "Blackwood." The boy spoke up, eyes bright. "You're talking about Jesse Blackwood." "Michael," his mother scolded. "You hush now." But the damage was done. Sarah nodded slightly. "The money's yours, rightfully. The question is whether you'll take it." "Blood money," Mrs. Henderson said. "Stolen from banks, taken in violence." "Recovered from a thief," Sarah corrected. "Returned to those he robbed. The violence was Benedict's when he poisoned your herd." Tom Henderson rubbed his face with his good hand. "Even if we wanted, those men made it clear. We cooperate with outlaws. We're finished." "You're already finished. You just haven't admitted it yet." Sarah leaned forward. "How long can you hold out? Another season? 2? Without cattle, without capital? This farm's dying. You know it. Better poor than dead," Mrs. Henderson said. Is watching your children go hungry better? Is losing your land inch by inch better?" Sarah softened her voice. "I know what it's like to have nothing, to run until running is all you know. There comes a point where you have to stand, fight, or accept that you've already lost." Silence. Stretched, the windmill creaked outside. Finally, Henderson looked at his wife, some wordless communication passing between them. "If," he said slowly, "if we were to accept this offer, how would it work? Simple. The money appears. No one sees who leaves it. You find it hidden somewhere, your barn maybe, under loose floorboards. Could have been there for years, and if Benedict's men come asking, you know nothing. Found money on your property, that's all. Finders keepers." The children watched with wide eyes. This was adventure, danger, the stuff of dime novels. Sarah remembered being that young before she learned what violence really cost. "We need time to think," Mrs. Henderson said. "Time's the one thing you don't have. Those men will be back. Others too. Every day you wait, the noose tightens. Henderson stood, pacing to the window. 4,000. That would pay off the bank, buy new stock, repair the barn, save the farm. His wife finished softly. Yes. He turned back. When? Tomorrow night. Check your hayloft under the loose board near the back wall. And Mr. Henderson, Sarah replaced her hat. When they ask, and they will, you never saw me, never spoke to anyone. What about Blackwood? Will he come himself? He's indisposed, but his mission continues. There are dozens of families like yours, all waiting for justice. Don't let fear stop you from taking what's rightfully yours. She left through the back door, melting into darkness. Behind her, she heard the family debating, voices low and urgent. They'd take the money. She was certain. Desperation made philosophers of us all. The ride back to town passed quickly. Sarah's mind churned with plans. Getting the money to the farm would be tricky with Benedict's men watching. But she'd handled worse. She was so focused on strategy that she almost missed the shadow moving near the boarding house. Sarah reined in, studying the building from across the street. There, a figure in the alley barely visible, another on the roof opposite. Watchers, but watching for whom? She dismounted, leading her horse around back. Mrs. Clearwater kept her garden behind the house, with a gate connecting to the neighbor's property. Sarah tied the horse and moved on foot, knife loose in its sheath. The back door was locked, but she'd noticed earlier that the pantry window didn't latch properly. She eased it open, slipped inside among sacks of flour and preserved goods. Voices from the front parlor, Mrs. Clearwater's nervous tones, a man's questions. Sarah crept closer, staying in shadow. Telling you, he's just a sick old man. Mining. Accident, his niece said. Mind if we confirm that? Have a look at this sick old man. He's resting, doctor's orders. Won't take but a minute. You understand? We got to check every stranger. That outlaw Blackwood's in the area. Wounded, they say. Sarah's pulse quickened. They were here for Jessie. She moved silently up the back stairs. The door to their room stood partly open. Mrs. Clearwater always left it that way for air circulation. Inside, Blackwood sat on the bed's edge, fully dressed, gun in hand. His eyes found hers immediately. She held up 3 fingers pointed downward. He nodded understandingly. Footsteps on the main stairs, heavy boots, no attempt at stealth. Sarah gestured for Blackwood to get back in bed. Look sick. He shook his head, pointed to the window. She crossed to it, looked out. 2 more men in the street. They were surrounded, Mr. Morrison. Mrs. Clearwater's voice tight with fear. You have visitors. The door swung wide. 3 men entered, guns drawn. The leader, a thin man with pockmarked skin, smiled coldly. Well, Jessie Blackwood, and you must be his new partner, the woman from Cedar Ridge. Blackwood kept his gun steady. Don't know what you're talking about. Name's Seth Morrison. Sure it is. And I'm President Grant. The man gestured to his companions. Hank, check the window. Willis, watch the hall. Lot of trouble for a sick old man, Sarah said. Drop the knife, lady. Slow and easy. She complied, letting the blade clatter to the floor. The leader relaxed slightly. A mistake. He dismissed her as a threat without the weapon. Here's how this plays, he said. Blackwood, you're worth 5,000 dead or alive. We'd prefer alive, easier to transport, but we're not picky. And her? Blackwood asked. No bounty on her. Yet. But I'm sure Benedict would pay something for information about Blackwood's accomplice. Sarah caught Blackwood's eye, saw him tense. He was going to try something stupid, heroic but stupid. She moved first. Her boot heel caught the knife, flipping it up into her hand. In the same motion she threw, not at the leader but at the oil lamp on the dresser. Glass shattered. Flames whooshed across spilled kerosene. The room exploded into chaos. Blackwood shot the man watching the window. Sarah dove for the leader, getting inside his gun arm. They crashed into the washstand, porcelain shattering. The third man fired wild, his bullet splintering the doorframe. Blackwood's second shot took him down, but more men were coming up the stairs, drawn by the gunfire. Go! Blackwood shoved Sarah toward the window. "I'll hold them!" "Not without you." The fire was spreading, feeding on curtains and bedding. Smoke filled the room. The leader, bleeding from a gash on his head, fumbled for his dropped gun. Sarah grabbed Blackwood's arm. Together they rushed through the window, crashing through a shower of glass. The roof sloped sharply here. They slid, scrabbling for purchase, then dropped into the garden below. The impact knocked Sarah's breath out. She rolled, came up running. Blackwood was beside her, limping but moving. Behind them, flames licked from the broken window. Men shouted, boots pounded on stairs. They reached the horses as the first pursuer appeared at the garden gate. Sarah's. The throw was instinctive. The knife sprouted from his shoulder, spinning him around. Then they were mounted, spurring through back alleys. Gunfire erupted behind them. The boarding house was fully ablaze now, orange light painting the sky. "Mrs. Clearwater?" Sarah called. "Got out. Saw her in the street." Blackwood leaned low over his horse's neck. "Keep riding," they burst onto. The main road, hooves clattering on packed earth. More shots, but fading with distance. The town fell away behind them, replaced by open prairie and star-filled sky. 5 miles out, Blackwood called a halt. They walked the horses, letting them cool. Sarah's hands shook with the aftermath. "The Hendersons," she said. "I made contact. They'll take the money." "Good. We'll circle back tomorrow. Find another way." "No." She reined in, facing him. "They knew we were there. Knew you were hurt. Someone talked. Mrs. Clearwater wouldn't, not her, but the doctor maybe, or someone who saw us arrive." Sarah's mind raced through possibilities. "Doesn't matter now. What matters is they're getting smarter, coordinating." Blackwood nodded grimly. "Benedict's tightening the net. Won't be long before every town's too hot for us. Then we change tactics. No more towns. We go to the families direct. Riskier. Exposed. Everything's risky now." She looked back toward Prosperity, where fire still glowed on the horizon. "But at least we choose our ground. Our timing." They rode through the night, putting distance between themselves and pursuit. Near dawn, they made cold camp in a grove of cottonwoods. No fire, too visible. They shared water and the last of their dried meat. "I'm sorry," Sarah said. "About the boarding house, the fire. You saved our lives." Quick thinking, using a lamp. "Seems like all I do lately is burn things down." Sometimes that's what's needed. Clear away the old to make room for something new. She studied him in the grey, pre-dawn light. "Your fever's back. I'll manage. Like you managed before. Nearly dying on me?" A ghost of a smile. "Didn't though, did I? Thanks to you. Don't make a habit of it. I'm running out of medical miracles." They rested through the heat of the day, taking turns on watch. No sign of pursuit, but that meant little. Their enemies were learning, adapting. The game had changed as afternoon wore toward evening. They prepared to move. The Henderson money, retrieved from its hiding place during their escape, needed delivering. After that, "How many names are left?" Sarah asked. Blackwood consulted his list, now stained with smoke and blood. 38, scattered from here to California. Long way to go, getting longer every day. He folded the paper carefully. "You can still walk away. Find that trading post in Montana. Start fresh." Sarah checked her knife, the one she'd retrieved from the wounded Pinkerton. "Told you before. I don't abandon partners. This isn't your fight. Became my fight the moment I chose to ride with you." She met his eyes. "Besides, someone needs to keep you alive long enough to finish that list." As darkness fell, they mounted. Up the Henderson farm waited, and beyond it, 37 more families carrying hope and desperation in equal measure. The odds were getting worse, the enemies multiplying. But for the first time in her life, Sarah Morrison had something worth fighting for, something beyond mere survival. The most wanted man in the West rode beside her, and together they disappeared. Into the gathering night, behind them, prosperity burned. Ahead, uncertainty beckoned. She wouldn't have it any other way. They approached the Henderson farm from the east, using a dry riverbed that cut through the prairie like a scar. The moon was new, offering perfect darkness, but making navigation treacherous. Sarah's horse stumbled twice on loose stones before she dismounted to lead on foot. "There," Blackwood whispered, pointing to a ridge ahead. "We'll leave the horses here." They picketed the animals in a small grove, then climbed the ridge on foot. Below, the Henderson farm slumbered peacefully. Too peacefully. No dogs barked. No lights showed in the windows. Sarah's instinct screamed danger. "Something's wrong." Blackwood was already moving, rifle in hand. They descended carefully, using scattered boulders for cover. The barn loomed ahead, its doors standing open. Wrong. For nighttime, farmers always secured their buildings after dark. They reached the structure's shadow. Sarah drew her knife, while Blackwood covered the approaches. Inside, silence. The promised loose board in the hayloft waited, but first they needed to ensure the family's safety. A soft sound made them freeze, crying, muffled and distant. Coming from the house, they crossed the yard in a crouched run. The kitchen door stood ajar, hanging crooked on its hinges. Through the gap, Sarah glimpsed overturned furniture, scattered belongings. Blackwood went in first, gun ready. Sarah followed, knife reversed along her forearm. The kitchen was a disaster. Cupboards emptied, drawers pulled out, flour and sugar spilled across the floor. The crying grew louder, a child's voice terrified. They found the family in the front parlor. Tom Henderson sat on the floor, blood seeping from a gash on his forehead. His wife held their youngest daughter, both weeping. The boy, Michael, stood protective over his other sister, fists clenched despite his fear. "Don't move." Henderson's voice was hollow. "They said if anyone came—" "Where are they?" Blackwood scanned the room. "Gone. An hour ago. But they'll be back. Said they'd kill us all if—" Henderson's eyes widened as he recognized them. "You shouldn't have come. They know. Somehow they know about the money." Sarah knelt beside Mrs. Henderson, checking the children for injuries. Bruises, terror, but nothing serious. "How many men?" "6. Maybe 7. Led by someone called Creed. Mean-looking bastard with—" The sound of horses cut him off, many horses approaching fast. Blackwood moved to the window. "Too late. They're here." Sarah's mind raced through options. Fight, impossible odds. Run, not with the family. Hide, where? "The root cellar," Michael said. "Under the kitchen. It's hidden. Pa built it special." Henderson shook his head. "Won't. Fool them twice. That's where we hid before." "Not all of us," Sarah said. "Just the children and Mrs. Henderson. The rest of us draw them off." "I won't leave Tom." "You will." Sarah's voice brooked no argument. "For your children, now move." The hoofbeats were louder. Blackwood helped hustle the family toward the kitchen. "Sarah's right. Get below. Whatever happens, don't come out until it's quiet." The cellar entrance was cleverly concealed beneath a throw rug and loose floorboards. The children descended quickly, their mother following reluctantly. Henderson paused at the opening. "The money. If we don't make it, worry about that later," Blackwood said. "Go." They replaced the boards and rug just as horses entered the yard. Sarah counted silhouettes through the window. 8 riders, maybe more. They spread out surrounding the house. "Blackwood!" a voice bellowed from outside. "Jesse Blackwood! We know you're in there!" Sarah recognized the voice from the boarding house, the scarred man she'd fought. So he'd survived. "Got a proposition." For you," the voice continued. "Come out peaceful, and the family lives. Make us dig you out. They die first. You've got 1 minute." Blackwood looked at Sarah. Something passed between them. Understanding. Resolution. They both knew how this would likely end. "Been a hell of a ride," he said softly. "Not over yet." She checked her weapons. Knife. The Colt he'd given her. Extra ammunition. "They want you alive. That's an advantage. They'll want you dead." "No. Bounty means no value. Then I'll have to be valuable." She moved toward the back door. "Give me 30 seconds, then go out the front. I'll create enough chaos to give the family a chance." Sarah. But she was already gone, slipping into the darkness. The house had a wraparound porch, deep shadows beneath the eaves. She crept along it, counting enemies, mapping positions. The leader, Creed, sat his horse directly in front, flanked by 2 men. Others had dismounted, taking cover behind water troughs and fence posts. Professional positioning. These weren't ordinary bounty hunters. "Time's up, Blackwood. What'll it be?" Sarah heard the front door open. Blackwood emerged, hands visible but near his guns. "Let the family go. They're not part of this." "Family? What family?" Creed's laugh was ugly. "Just an empty farmhouse as far as I can see. Course, if someone was hiding innocence, that'd be a shame. Accidents happen when bullets start flying. What do you want? You, alive. That pretty little hellcat you ride with, and the locations of every family on your list. Don't have any list. Now that's disappointing. Boys, check the house. Turn it inside out." 3 men started forward. Sarah let them pass her position, then struck. Her knife found the kidney of the rearmost man. He dropped without a sound. She took his gun, moved on. The second man heard something, started to turn. Sarah's boot caught his knee as he fell. Her stolen gun butt cracked against his skull. 2 down. The third man was faster. He spun, raising a rifle. Sarah shot him twice, center mass. The gunshot shattered the night's tension. "Cover!" Creed roared. "It's the woman!" Sarah rolled behind a water barrel as bullets splintered wood around her. In the chaos, she saw Blackwood dive back into the house. Good. Better defensive position there. She fired at muzzle flashes, keeping their attention. Motioned to her left. She spun, shot a man trying to flank her. The Colt clicked empty. She dropped it, snatched up the dead man's rifle. "Surround the house," Creed ordered. "No one gets out." Windows shattered. Blackwood was firing from inside, picking his shots. Between them, they'd accounted for 5 enemies, but more were coming. Sarah could hear horses approaching from the main road. She needed higher ground. The barn roof would give her clear shots at anyone attacking the house. She sprinted across open ground, bullets whining past. Up a ladder, across wooden shingles. From here she could see everything, including the reinforcements. Another 12 riders coming fast. "Blackwood," she called. "Company coming." His reply was lost in gunfire. The attackers had regrouped, concentrating fire on the house. Sarah shot. One trying to reach the front door, wounded another circling toward the back. Then she saw something that made her blood freeze. 2 men were dragging something from a wagon. Dynamite, enough to level the house and anyone in it, including the family in the cellar. Sarah sighted carefully on the dynamite carriers. Her first shot missed. The second caught one in the shoulder, spinning him around, but his partner kept coming, the fuse already lit. No time for another shot. Sarah did the only thing she could, jumped from the roof, landing hard atop the dynamite man. They went down in a tangle. The explosive rolled away, fuse sputtering. Sarah lunged for it, grabbed the cylinder, yanked the fuse free with seconds to spare. The man tackled her from behind. They rolled in the dirt, fighting for control of the weapon. He was stronger, heavier, got on top, hands around her throat. Sarah's vision grayed. With her last strength, she drove her knee up. He grunted, loosened his grip. She clawed at his eyes, broke free. Her knife was gone, lost in the fall. She grabbed a fence post, swung with desperate strength. Wood connected with the skull. He toppled sideways. But the battle was turning. Reinforcements had arrived, not Benedict's men, but riders wearing badges. Real law. A U.S. Marshal's posse, drawn by the gunfire. "Federal officers," someone shouted. "Everyone drop your weapons." The fighting stuttered to a halt. Sarah saw Blackwood in the doorway, guns still trained on Creed. The bounty hunter sat on his horse, calculating odds. "Marshal Fuller," Creed called. "Perfect timing. We've got Blackwood." Cornered. A man rode forward, wearing the star of a federal marshal, older, weathered, with careful eyes. "Seems like you've got more than that, Creed. This looks like a massacre in the making. Just trying to bring in a wanted man." These folks harbored a fugitive. Fuller surveyed the scene. Dead bodies, the shot-up house, Sarah standing bloody over an unconscious attacker. "And what's your part in this, miss?" Sarah straightened, meeting his gaze. "Trying to keep innocent people alive." "She's Blackwood's accomplice," Creed interrupted. "Been riding with him for weeks." "That true?" Sarah glanced at Blackwood. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Trust the marshal," the gesture said. "I've been riding with him," she admitted. "But these men attacked a family. Children are hiding in the root cellar, terrified. Is that justice?" Fuller dismounted, walked to the house. "Mr. Blackwood, you want to come out, tell your side?" "Happy to, Marshal, long as these vultures don't shoot me in the back. Anyone fired without my order, they'll answer to federal law." Fuller's voice carried absolute authority. "Creed, tell your men to stand down." Reluctantly, Creed signaled his surviving men, weapons lowered, though no one relaxed. Blackwood emerged, hands visible. "Marshal, Jesse, been a while. Heard you've been busy. Banks, railroad money, playing Robin Hood, just returning stolen property to rightful owners. That's for the courts to decide. You're under arrest for bank robbery, assault on Pinkerton agents, and about a dozen other charges." Fuller glanced at Sarah. "You too, miss." "Questions need answering." Sarah nodded. It was over, but at least the family was safe. Henderson emerged from the house, helped his family from the cellar. The children clung to their mother, wide-eyed at the carnage in their yard. "These people weren't involved," Blackwood said. "They're victims of Benedict's greed, lost their cattle to his schemes. Like I said, courts will sort it out." Fuller gestured to his deputies. "Secure the prisoners, gentle-like." They came peacefully. As a deputy approached with shackles, Sarah made a decision. "Marshal, the money Blackwood carries, it's meant for families Benedict cheated. There's a list, names, amounts, proof of what's owed." Creed started forward. "That money's stolen property." "Shut up, Creed." Fuller's tone could have frozen water. "You've made enough of a mess here. Miss, are you saying there's evidence of fraud, more than fraud, intimidation, violence, theft, all documented? Check his vest pocket." Fuller retrieved Blackwood's list, studied it. Interesting reading. "Henderson, your name's here. Says you're owed $4,000 for poisoned cattle." Tom Henderson nodded. "It's true. Lost everything. Been barely holding on." "And Blackwood was bringing you this money?" "We never asked for it. But yes, he was trying to help." Fuller folded the paper carefully. "This changes things. Not the bank robbery charges, those stand, but if this evidence holds up, there might be others facing justice too." He looked at Creed. "Including men who terrorize families in the night." Creed's scarred face darkened. "I've got legal bounty papers, which don't authorize attacking civilians. Deputy Morris arrests Mr. Creed. Charges of assault, attempted, murder, conspiracy. You can't. I'm a U.S. Marshal. I can and will." Fuller's hand rested on his gun. "Question is, you coming peacefully or not?" The tension stretched. Then Creed slowly raised his hands. His men followed suit, as deputies. Sorted through the chaos, Fuller approached Sarah and Blackwood. "You two caused quite a stir. Trial's going to be something. Will the families get their money?" Sarah asked. "If the evidence supports it, yes. Court can order restitution. Might even investigate Mr. Benedict's business practices." Fuller smiled. "Slightly. Assuming you both live to testify. Is that a threat? Warning, Benedict's got deep pockets, long reach. Federal custody is safer than running free, but nowhere's completely safe." They were loaded onto a prison wagon as dawn broke over the prairie. Sarah found herself shackled beside Blackwood, watching the Henderson farm recede. The family stood. In their yard, Tom's arm around his wife, children clustered close. "Think they'll be all right?" she asked. "Fuller's honest. He'll see justice done." Blackwood shifted, chains clinking. "Might take time, but that family will get what's owed." "And the others?" 37 names we couldn't reach? Maybe our testimony helps them too. Expose Benedict's schemes could be legal remedies. Sarah leaned back against the wagon's side. Prison. Never thought I'd volunteer for a cell. Beats a bullet. Or a noose. That's optimistic, considering we're heading for trial in Benedict's territory. Fuller's federal. Case won't be tried local. Still, man like Benedict doesn't leave things to chance. As if to underscore her words, riders appeared on a distant ridge, too far to identify, but their presence felt ominous. Watching, planning. The marshal noticed too. "Pick up the pace," he told the wagon driver. "Want to make Fort Lincoln by nightfall." Sarah studied the distant watchers. "It's not over." "No," Blackwood agreed. "Benedict won't give up easy. Too much at stake." "What about your sister?" "She'll hear you've been captured." His jaw tightened. "Mary made her choice, moved on, can't blame her. Family's complicated." Speaking from experience? Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Had a cousin once, Rachel. Took me in after I ran. Tried to give me a normal life. Lasted 6 months before my past caught up." "What happened?" "Those brothers I mentioned, the ones whose kin I killed. They found me. Rachel tried to protect me. Got shot for her trouble." Sarah's voice went flat. "She lived but barely, lost the use of her legs. Last I heard she was in a sanitarium back east. Because of me. Because of men who chose violence. Not your fault. Fault doesn't matter. Results do. People near me get hurt. It's a pattern. Patterns can be broken. Can they? Look where we are. You tried to help people. I tried to help you. Now we're both facing prison or worse." Blackwood rattled his chains. "Rather be here having tried than free and knowing I did nothing." The wagon rolled on, eating miles. Other prisoners had joined them, Creed and 3 of his men, sullen and silent. The marshal's posse formed a protective square, alert for trouble. By noon, the distant riders had multiplied. A dozen now, keeping pace but not approaching. Fuller called a halt at a water stop. "Those friends of yours?" he asked Creed. "No idea what you mean." "Sure you don't." Fuller posted extra guards. "Keep alert, boys. Might have company before we reach the fort." Sarah accepted water from a deputy, noting how he avoided her eyes. Word had already spread. The woman who rode with Jesse Blackwood, who'd burned down a mill, Fort Pinkerton's, building a legend she'd never wanted. "Regrets?" Blackwood asked quietly. She considered it. "About getting caught, yes. About the rest?" She watched the Henderson children playing by their mother's feet, safe because of their actions. "No regrets." "Good, because what comes next will test that resolve. The trial, prison, whatever Benedict throws at us." He met her eyes. "You could still deal, turn evidence against me, claim coercion. Fuller might—" "Stop." Her voice carried enough edge to cut. "I made my choice, same as you. We see this through together." A commotion near the horses drew their attention. One of the pack animals had gone lame. Deputies gathered around, discussing options. Sarah noticed something else. The watching riders had vanished. The horizon stood empty. "Blackwood," she whispered. "They're gone." He followed her gaze, immediately understanding. Trouble coming. But from where? The answer came from the last direction. Anyone expected below. The ground near the lame horse suddenly collapsed. Men erupted from concealed pits, firing as they emerged. The deputies focused on the animal were caught completely off guard. "Ambush!" Fuller roared, drawing his weapon. Chaos exploded, gunfire from multiple directions. Deputies fell, horses screamed and bolted. The prison wagon rocked as frightened animals tried to run. Sarah saw Creed grinning through the bars. "Right on time, boys." A rider thundered past, tossing something through the wagon's bars. "Keys!" Creed snatched them, began working his shackles. "We need those keys," Blackwood said urgently. Sarah was already moving. She lunged across the wagon, grabbed Creed's wrist. They fought for control, chains tangling. Another prisoner joined in, trying to pull her off. A gunshot, close and loud. The prisoner fell back, clutching his shoulder. Marshal Fuller stood at the wagon's door, smoking gun in hand. "Nobody moves," he ordered. But the battle raged around them. More attackers appeared, the distant riders who'd circled during the diversion. The marshal's men were outnumbered, outmaneuvered. "Got to get you out of here," Fuller decided. He shot the lock off the wagon door. "Can't protect you in this box." Sarah and Blackwood tumbled out, still shackled but mobile. Fuller herded them toward a cluster of rocks, the only decent cover. They made it halfway before Fuller grunted and stumbled. Blood spread across his vest. He pushed them forward even as he fell. "Go! Find cover!" Sarah grabbed the marshal's gun as they ran. She fired at pursuing attackers, buying seconds. They reached the rocks as bullets chipped stone around them. "The keys," Blackwood said. Fuller had keys. He was right. The marshal carried universal shackle keys, but Fuller lay in the open, 20 feet away. Already, attackers were closing. Sarah made the calculation. "Cover me!" Sarah, no, but she was already moving, low and fast, using every scrap of cover. Bullets tracked her progress. One tugged at her shirt, another creased her thigh, drawing blood. She reached Fuller, still breathing, barely. The keys were on his belt. She grabbed them, started back. A shadow fell across her. She looked up to find Creed standing over her, gun pointed at her head. He'd escaped during the chaos. Well, the Hellcat. "Benedict's paying extra for you. Seems you killed his nephew in Cedar Ridge. He wants you alive, wants to handle things personally." Sarah's hand tightened on the marshal's gun. But Creed had the drop on her. "Go ahead," he said. "Try it. Rather take you dead than not at all." Time slowed. Sarah saw Blackwood rising from cover, trying to draw Creed's attention, saw other attackers closing in, saw Fuller's eyes flutter open, his hand move slightly. She saw the derringer he pulled from his boot. 2 shots. Fuller fired once, hitting Creed in the side. The bounty hunter spun, his shot going wide. Sarah rolled, came up firing. Her bullet caught Creed's center mass. He toppled backward, surprise etched on his scarred features. "Go!" Fuller gasped. "Both of you! Run!" Sarah hesitated. Leaving a wounded man felt wrong. "Can't save me." Fuller coughed blood. "Save yourselves. Finish what you started. Make it mean something." Blackwood reached them, helped Sarah to her feet. Around them, the battle was turning. Benedict's men were winning through sheer numbers. They ran, not toward the rocks, but toward the horses scattered by the fight. Sarah still had the keys. As they moved, she worked the shackles, freeing first Blackwood, then herself. A rider bore down on them. Blackwood grabbed the man's leg, dragged him from the saddle. They fought briefly before Blackwood's fist ended it. "Mount up!" They swung onto the stolen horse together. Other mounts ran loose. Sarah caught another's reins, transferred to it. Now they both had transportation. "The families!" Blackwood shouted. "The Hendersons!" Sarah looked back. The family's wagon sat abandoned, but she glimpsed them fleeing on foot, a deputy herding them toward safety. They'd make it. Had to. Pursuit was already forming. Benedict's men, regrouping after their victory. But Sarah and Blackwood had a head start. Fast horses, and desperation driving them. They rode hard into a broken country, using every trick they knew to confuse pursuit. Creek beds to hide tracks, false trails, backtracking. As the sun sank toward the horizon, they'd gained breathing room. They stopped in a narrow canyon to rest the horses. Both were bloodied, exhausted, running on adrenaline. "Fuller's dead," Sarah said. "It wasn't a question, probably. Good man. Deserved better." The Hendersons saw them reach the trees. "That deputy, Morris, he'll get them somewhere safe." Blackwood pulled the list from his vest, somehow still there through everything. 37 names to go. They'll hunt us harder now. Federal marshal dead. "That's a hanging offense." Already was. "Bank robbery, remember?" Sarah laughed despite everything. Fair point. So what now? Now. Blackwood looked at the setting sun. Now we disappear. Go underground. Find another way to finish this. Fuller died believing we were worth saving. Can't waste that. Benedict won't stop, neither will the law. Then we get creative. The money's hidden, cached across 3 states. We know where, they don't. We can still distribute it. From hiding, while being hunted by everyone. Done impossible things before. This morning you were a nameless woman with nothing but a knife. Look at you now. Sarah examined herself. Blood-stained, battered but alive, free, still fighting. What am I now? Someone who stands for something, someone who changes things. He smiled. Someone with a name worth remembering. As darkness fell, they planned. New routes to the cached money. Secret. Ways to reach the families. How to fight Benedict without direct confrontation. The odds were astronomical, their resources minimal, but they had each other, had purpose, had the memory of good people like Fuller who'd believed their cause was just. Where first? Sarah asked. Blackwood consulted his list. The Parkers. Lost. Their mill to arson, living in a tent city outside Grand Junction. 4,000 would set them up again. Long ride. Better get started then. They mounted up as stars emerged overhead. Behind them lay capture, near death and loss. Ahead waited uncertainty, danger and slim hope of success. Sarah Morrison, who'd forgotten her own name to escape the past, rode into the future beside the most wanted man in the West. They were outlaws, fugitives, rebels against power and corruption. They were also perhaps heroes in the making. The canyon swallowed them, and the night wrapped them in darkness. Somewhere, Benedict raged. Somewhere, lawmen organized a pursuit. But for now, they were free. Free to continue their impossible mission. Free to honor the sacrifices of those who'd helped them. Free to prove that sometimes justice came from outside the law. The most dangerous phase of their journey was just beginning. 6 months later, the courthouse in Denver filled with spectators. Word had spread. The infamous Jesse Blackwood and his mysterious partner had been captured. But the trial wasn't going as Randolph Benedict expected. Sarah sat in the witness chair, no longer nameless or hiding. She'd chosen to reclaim her identity, but on her terms. The prosecutor held up a document. Miss Morrison, this ledger details every family your associate claimed to help. Yet you managed to distribute funds to all 37 remaining names while being hunted. How? Sarah met Benedict's glare from across the courtroom. His face had aged years in months, his empire crumbling as investigations exposed decades of fraud. We had help, she said simply. Turns out many people wanted to see justice done. Railroad workers who'd witnessed Benedict's schemes, ranchers who'd lost land, even some lawmen who knew the truth but couldn't prove it before. The judge leaned forward. You're saying law enforcement aided your criminal activities? I'm saying good people recognized a greater crime. Every family on that list provided evidence, contracts, testimonies, proof that Benedict poisoned cattle, burned crops, murdered settlers. Benedict shot to his feet. Lies! Your Honor, this woman is... Sit down, Mr. Benedict. You'll have your turn. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Witness after witness took the stand. The Hendersons, the Parkers, dozens of families Jesse and Sarah had reached during their final run. Each told the same story. Intimidation, theft, violence, and then unexpected redemption. Fuller's deputies testified too. The marshal's final report, written before his death, recommended investigating Benedict's operations. His sacrifice hadn't been in vain. When the verdicts came, they surprised everyone. Jesse Blackwood, guilty of bank robbery, but sentenced to 5 years instead of hanging. The judge cited his misguided but ultimately beneficial intentions, and the recovered evidence of systematic fraud. Sarah Morrison, guilty of aiding a fugitive, sentenced to 2 years. but the judge suspended the sentence, noting her role in exposing corruption that had poisoned the very foundations of territorial justice. Randolph Benedict, guilty on 43 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and murder. Life imprisonment. His empire dismantled, his assets distributed to victims. As they led Jesse away, he caught Sarah's eye. "Watch over them," he said. "Make sure the families get what they're owed." "I will." She touched the knife at her belt, the same one she'd carried since the beginning. "And Jesse, thank you for showing me there's more to life than running." He smiled. "You showed yourself. I just provided the horse." 5 years later, Sarah stood before a different courthouse. This time, she waited outside, watching the doors. When they opened, Jesse Blackwood emerged, blinking in bright sunlight. Prison had aged him, added grey to his temples, but his eyes remained sharp. "Wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "Made a promise. Besides, thought you might need this." She held out his old gun belt, kept it safe. He strapped it on, the weight familiar. "What now?" Sarah produced a letter. "The Hendersons are doing well. Tom's running for territorial senate, wants to pass laws preventing another Benedict. The Parkers rebuilt their mill, all the families, they're thriving. And you?" She smiled. "I opened a school. Turns out teaching children is almost as dangerous as fighting outlaws, but more rewarding." "A teacher." He shook his head. "From a nameless woman to educator. Quite a journey. We all become who we're meant to be. Sometimes it just takes the long way around." She paused. "There's something else, a proposition. Not another list, I hope. Better. The territorial governor's creating a new position, special investigator for fraud and corruption. Needs someone who understands both sides of the law." She met his eyes. "Interested?" Jesse laughed. The first genuine laugh she'd heard from him in years. "A lawman, after everything? Why not? You've got experience with criminals, know their methods, and you've already proven you'll fight for justice, even outside the law." He considered. "On one condition, you help partners, like before." Sarah extended her hand. "Deal, though I prefer less gunfighting this time." "No promises, but I'll try." As they walked away from the courthouse, Sarah reflected on the strange paths life carved. She'd begun with no name, no map, nothing but a knife and the ghosts of her past. Now she had purpose, identity, and a future worth building. "You know," Jesse said, "I never asked. That name you left behind all those years ago, what was it?" Sarah smiled. "Doesn't matter anymore. That girl died in a blood-soaked room. I'm who I chose to become." "And who's that?" She touched the knife one more time. Not for protection now, but remembrance. Of where she'd been, what she'd survived, who she'd become. Sarah Morrison, teacher, investigator, someone who stands their ground. The most wanted man in the West walked beside her into a new chapter. Behind them lay violence and running. Ahead waited the harder task of building justice within the law, but they'd proven one truth. Sometimes the greatest journeys begin with nothing but courage and the choice to become more than your past defines. Sometimes you have to lose your name to find yourself. The end. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.